Start with Spalletti's Italy, the first two tests. Let's just start your overall first impressions of what you saw over the two games.
I liked more what I saw at San Siro. I liked how aggressive they were, how they pushed forward. I think there we got to see, okay, no, this is what Spalletti's Azzurri is going to be like. Yeah. We expected it to be that way because we obviously know what he's capable of, what we saw from him throughout his career. I even thought maybe, hey, why not go back? Because we've had the Ciro Immobile debate. I'm more against the Immobile as an every game starter. I think it's now time to bring in the new generation. But I also thought, who knows? Maybe we get a Raspadori leading the line, and we see the Roma 4-6-0 that Spalletti used to employ when it was Totti as the false nine without a true striker. He did that at Roma, so he has done something like that before. But I really liked Frattesi's involvement. I think now he definitely starts for Inter in the Derby della Madonnina. Di Marco's an interesting one. I think that's the one where I look at it and I think, right. And I want you guys to give me your opinion about, do you think Italy would be better playing three center backs? Because when I look at the actual players that they have, and I know that they're kind of weak in the center back front, we don't even know who the best partner is for Bastoni. It might be Scalvini, it might be one of the Lazio guys. I think both are a viable answer. But I think to get the best out of the wing backs that we have, even Di Lorenzo is more defensively sound than Di Marco, but especially Di Marco, who's becoming, I think, on the cusp of being truly a top-level wing-back. I don't think he really works in the back four. And I think this is because it exposes him as a defensive liability. As good as he is going forward, defensively, I don't think anyone trusts him.
I think Frank and I were talking about this, before the podcast, how with this Azzurri, it's too early to decide who is what players should be on the starting 11 versus not. But there are a few positions I think we know that should be on the pitch. Right, Di Marco is one of them. Bastoni is probably one of them, and probably Donnarumma. And you can make some debate about the defense. But I like that shout about three in the back because Bastoni's played some of his best ball as one of the three back defenders because he's always going to push up. He's almost another wing back there that you could have. But Di Marco, to your point, Bonetti, is that he does so well going to the attack. He is on that precipice of becoming, beyond elite and world class with the way he attacks the ball, crosses the ball, reads the game so well on the offensive side, and yet doesn't have quite the defensive shutdown and capabilities that we want to see and that he will get. And so putting maybe him on the left and Di Lorenzo on the right, or even Di Lorenzo at center back or something, using the wing backs to the best ability that we can by putting him up in the middle, which would also help us with the midfield, which isn't the strongest at the moment. We have to see what they're going to be made of. Adding those wing backs, I think, will help to overload that midfield and take control. Frank, what do you think?
Yeah, well said. Frank, were you checking your Snapchat there? What's going on, man?
No, I take notes before the show, so and this is why I always look down over here because everybody and it's a fair assumption.
I thought you were scrolling your Snapchat.
He's on MySpace. He's on MySpace.
Matteo, I'm 48 years old. I don't have Snapchat.
Oh, you're looking good, man. I'm telling you, you look. Italians age like a nice Brunello. That's what I've learned over the years, and you guys are a prime example of that.
Tell my wife that.
Thank you.
Will do.
So,
sorry. No, continue.
Spalletti's dabbled with three in the back. He did it a little bit at Inter, but I think that's the problem. I think he's most comfortable playing 4-3-3, so he's going to force this to work with Di Marco. If he's going to do that, I don't mind that idea. I think you play a midfield where, and he's not really used to this in his systems either when you think about it. I'm actually thinking of Sarri. But a midfielder on that side that, maybe doesn't go attacking the penalty area, that will stay home a little bit more, that can give Di Marco a little bit more freedom to operate and play a little bit higher down the left-hand side might make some sense. I have a bigger concern with the midfield as a whole. I thought, Frattesi put in a great performance against Ukraine. I thought the way he set them up against North Macedonia with Tonali, Cristante, and Barella, it's almost as if he wanted to play through the lines, and it looked like he wanted to play through, Tonali a little bit, but it felt like they were trying to go through the lines, and there were a lot of balls that were lost cheaply in that midfield, and North Macedonia were set up on some counterattacks. Truthfully, in that first game, Italy were lucky to get out of there with a point. Because I thought North Macedonia had the better chances. But, coming back to it, you saw a contrast in how they approached it against the Ukraine. They did some more pressing, which led to the first Frattesi goal, but I thought they used their width a lot better. between the wingers and between the fullbacks, not necessarily wingbacks right now. I mean, when you look at the second goal for Vitesse, that's all born out of a change in the point of attack from left to right. And the right side, they were 2v1 on that defender. And that caused Ukraine to stretch a little bit. And that ultimately gave the room for Vitesse to score the goal. So my bigger concern with Italy right now is the midfield. And whenever they're forced to play through the lines, there were a lot of cheap giveaways in the first two games that led to counters for the opposing team. So the DiMarco thing, I think, will get sorted out. He's got Bastoni behind him, so that's a positive because there is transition. They're going from Inter to wing back and left center back to now full back. And
do you guys remember last year, Gerard Deulofeu, after Inter played Udinese, Deulofeu came out and said about DiMarco, this guy didn't defend. We knew we had space on that side, and this is, I think he was playing as a wing back. That's my issue with him in a back four is that I think I think his tendency is always to push forward. His first thought isn't, I need to be more selfless for the team. And I'm not saying he doesn't work hard because he does. That's not an issue with him. But I think it's just more his mentality of what he prefers to do when he's on the field, which is push, 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 get forward, inverted run, outside, cross it, shoot it. And that's where he's reaching top class levels. But I think in the back four, he just doesn't have that same level of freedom, even if it is a Spalletti system, even if, Spalletti does want the fullbacks to push. It's just not the same as if you're playing with three center backs behind you. The midfield is interesting to me, right? Because Locatelli was better, right? I think we can all easily admit that's not even a hot take. He was better than Cristante. It's not that I'm not a fan of Locatelli because I think we all know what he is. He's a good Serie A player, but he's not a player at the level where Juventus eventually want to get to, which is the Champions League. I don't think that if you go out of the group stage and you start playing in the knockouts and you start facing the top 10 teams in Europe, that a Locatelli is going to help you, might even hurt you. That's where the midfield can get overrun. I think that the only true world-class player that Italy have in that position right now is Marco Verratti. I would start him every single game. I don't care where he plays. That guy is a world-class talent. I covered PSG at beIN Sports for 4 seasons. I think 3 of them were full with Verratti. I got to see him so much. I think Italians have this thing against Verratti because they're pissed off that he never played in Serie A, and I get it. Like, that's fandom. And I think they like to take away anything they can from him just because of that annoyance that he's never been in the league that we love. And I'm annoyed by it too. I'm annoyed to see him wearing a Saudi Arabia kit when he could start for virtually any team in the league and be a huge help to them.
Agreed. And it brings me back to a point here when you're talking about the midfield. I mean, Verratti could easily play a role like Zielinski played for Spalletti's Napoli in a 4-3-3, where he can get himself in positions behind the front three, be a playmaker that, why is Zielinski so successful? Because there's games where there's so much attention put on Kvaratskhelia, Osimhen, and Politano. And that just opens up a ton. And if you're paying so much attention to them, well, then Zielinski's going to score 2 goals. Verratti's not a goal scorer, but you put him in a higher position and you give him the ball, and he did this in Mancini's Italy. He will pick out the dangerous pass and he will break your line. And he will come out of that match. He won't score 2 goals like Zielinski will, but he'll come out of there with 2 assists at least. So if Spalletti's looking for somebody to take the mantle similar to that, I agree with you, Matteo. Verratti should probably be in this conversation because to me, at this point, he's the only midfielder that Italy have that can do that.
Well, this is an interesting question. I think that I saw it swirling around on social media this weekend is that a lot of the lack of talent, it seems like with the Azzurri, is being blamed with the club team saying there's not enough Azzurri players starting for this, or even on the teams for all these clubs. And I don't buy into that. I don't buy into that.
Look, if they're good enough now with the way that we have Y-Scout, we have every scout in the world looking at every single level. They're looking at Serie C, they're looking at Serie B. They know who the youngsters are. Was it Claudio Lautito who said, we've looked through the whole pyramid, there's just no talent here. There's no one. Like, you used to get players going from Serie B to Serie A that would have a huge impact. That doesn't really happen anymore. I can't really think of many. Who was the last one? Gianluca Lapadula and Gatti from
Look at that Pescara team you tweeted out today with the 3 players that were there.
Yeah, no, but I tweeted it out because it's so unique that you have 3 players of that quality that are in Serie B. The players aren't there. Like we could, all of us want more Italians to play in Serie A, but if the players aren't good enough, and maybe there are some situations where I think like the smaller teams, instead of going to these far-flung places and going to these really small leagues, right? I'm saying like think of a Hellas Verona as an example. I know that our man Frank here loves Hellas Verona. They can't.
I'm relegating them this year, so I banged the drum from last year, but I'm relegating them this year.
So think about this: Hellas Verona. They can't buy anyone from the top 5 leagues. They can't afford them. They can't even buy anyone from the leagues after that: the Swiss league, the Dutch league, the Belgian league. They have to go to Eastern Europe. They go to the Romanian league, the Slovenian league, the Croatian league. A lot of those Eastern European countries where it's kind of like the 3rd tier of the teams of that level where they go. Now that's where I think you could draw a line and say, okay, guys, all right, let's pump the brakes. You're telling me there's no one in Serie B right now that knows the culture, knows the language, knows the way Calcio works, even if it is a step up that you could just get for much cheaper. Maybe there is something to say about, the foreign name kind of being sexier for the scout, because the scout, that's what he's paid for. It's like, oh, look who I found here playing for Hajduk Split, instead of just going, hey, I got a great signing. He's at Ternana. He's a Ternana right back. No one's going to get excited about that. He's balding. He's 28. He smokes a pack of Marlboro Reds every night. No one's going to get excited about that. That's not where these scouts want to make their money. They want to find the new, mysterious signing that the fans can get excited about. And I think, there's a little bit of that, but there also isn't just that much talent.
I mean, it's all subtopics of what I say about that whole situation about Serie A needing to, Serie A clubs are in business to make money, and in the cases of some Serie A clubs, they're in business. They're there to make money and to try to stay in Serie A. They're not there to develop the national team. So that becomes a challenge too. Nobody has found the perfect formula for developing the national team and fielding the most competitive team you possibly can field. So
it's enough being done though domestically to train these young players. We saw many teams go through their cycles. Brazil went through it. Germany went through it, where they had this lull, this gap in talent, and all of a sudden they focus all the energy on rebuilding the youth, and eventually those players just emerged out of those teams and kept their longevity going. Is that what's missing with the Azzurri right now? What's up with this gap talent?
You know what an interesting one's going to be to follow about all this is what happens to Francesco Camarda, the Milan striker who's been lighting it up. The guy's got like 600 goals. I think he set the record with the Pulcini for the most goals. And now there was a report today that Borussia Dortmund's interested in him. So we keep saying these big teams, they're not producing enough talent. And now suddenly you've got this. And again, at that age, I think he's under 15 still, right? It's hard to tell when they're that young. We thought Hakim Mastur was the next Messi, and look, he's playing, he's juggling cherries on YouTube. Yeah. So with this guy Camarda, I think you can look at him and say, right, if Milan can nurture him, if they can keep him, he actually might be the real deal. Yeah. But Borussia Dortmund and these German clubs are so smart, they're so shrewd that they're looking at even this level, the under 15s, the Pulcini, to try to see who they can steal away. And that's where it can get frustrating because maybe the talent is there. Maybe they're not getting nurtured the right way. From what I've seen and from everyone I've spoken to, the youth systems in Italy are some of the best still. And it's not necessarily the big teams. It's the Fiorentinas of the world. Atalanta's got a very highly rated youth system in the 21st century that pumps out talent. So the youth teams are there. The coaches are there. I think the coaches are the best in the world at every level, even at the youth level. Yeah. So it's so hard to predict. I think it's kind of random too. It just because to be at that highest level, I think it's something that for the most part you need to be born with it. I don't think that Messi was turned into this player. He just happened to have this otherworldly balance and a left foot from the highest of heavens. And it's not something that I think you can really teach. So I think it's just kind of like the roll of the dice. How is it Belgium had all the golden generation at one time? I think it's a matter of luck, right? Yeah. It's not really anything else. Yeah, you can point to the coaches and everything, but I think at that level, it has to just be random, right? Sometimes you can't analyze everything. You can't explain everything. And maybe this is one of the things.
Yep.
Good point.
Marco Nasti, yeah, that's another one. I'm just reading the
Yeah.
comments. Brian Johnson,
yeah.
it's good to see. My career is this is a peak. I have to say, it's been a long time. We
This is
finally
the
found
peak.
the right dollar figure. They added a few extra zeros, and I said, all right, let's do it.
We don't invite just anybody on the sit down, Matteo. I'm telling you.
Right.
I am honored to be on.